Roll for initiative.
Welcome back, everybody, to issue number 44 of the Roll for Initiative podcast. I am one of your hosts, DM Vincent, along with DM Jason.
Hello!
Yes, and DM Nick, who's silent as ever. There he is.
Nick's in a hotel by a pool right now.
Yes, Nick is coming live from a pool right now. So he may be a little bit on delay because he's relaxing.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So,
no, not by a pool. I'm in an undisclosed location.
All right.
Excellent. Website, everything's been updated. All show notes are
it's
up.
all up to date finally. With a nice new Gen Con counter I see.
I'm in an undisclosed location somewhere near Castle Greyhawk.
I was going to say Castle Grayskull, but
even better.
Yes, the Gen Con timer is up. We're counting down the days to Gen Con.
As of the time of this recording, it is 164 days, 15 minutes exactly until Gen Con.
That's right.
Wow.
I'm going to Gen Con. Jason will be at Gen Con. We're having a meetup that I already put the thing up on our site, Facebook, for the meetup at the Omni Hotel.
All right. So we hope to see a lot of people there. Everybody come to Gen Con.
That's right. We'll be there. We're wearing our shirts, so you can easily find us. Just look for Jason. As he said last year, the guy looks like Brad Pitt. I happened to listen to that show the other day, and you're like, look for the guy that looks like Brad Pitt.
For a given value of Brad Pitt, yes.
Yeah.
Hopefully some of the people who are coming will be wearing RFI shirts, so we'll spot them too.
Or the new and improved Sod t-shirt that just came out, too, for the Save or Die podcast.
Maybe I'll wear one of those.
Sure. The actual play podcast, some people asked us to talk about that a little bit.
Save or Die.
Okay. Nick, you really are on a delay, aren't you?
Yeah.
I think so.
Or at least a mental delay.
Some people asked to talk about that. Mine is still going strong. The players are having fun. It's almost at the end, and I'll be starting another one right after that. So,
cool.
That's that. Jason, yours has ended temporarily until you could find more time for yours. Because people ask what's going on with Barons, and we keep saying he's on hiatus.
Yeah, they're in hibernation until I get my clone finished.
Your clone? Oh, yeah. I just got that. Oh, okay.
Yes.
We had fixed the problem, like I said last week, for the DM screen, which I wanted to talk about this week quickly.
Yeah, so I forget the name of the company, but we did finally manage to find a place that will do them print on demand. So now it's just a question of us getting it finished up. Can't put an actual day on it, but it's moved to the top of the priority list, so we'll have that announced as soon as it's ready.
Awesome. I think it's Superior Pod was the place or something like that.
Yeah, maybe something like that. But I want to get these ready before GaryCon. So that's pretty soon.
Speaking about GaryCon, you'll be at GaryCon 3.
I will be at GaryCon. So if anybody doesn't know, it's GaryCon.com. It's March 25th to 27th. And this is a small convention. It's meant to stay small. It's for the old, the neckbeards and the grognards. And, it's a celebration of, Gary Gygax and gaming in his honor.
Yeah. Last year we had some good footage from it, so maybe this year we'll get some.
Because Gary was, totally cool and awesome.
Yes. And then the other convention that's coming up that we want to make sure to mention is ICON in Long Island. You can go to iconsf.org for info on that, and I will be there. Nick, I think you said you're going to make it or not going to make it?
No, I'm not going to be able to make it to Icons because, I have a new job, so
yes,
kind of like
congratulations.
Probationary period. But
it's hard. It's hard work in the dwarf mines, and so I understand.
Yeah, let me tell you. Yeah. Working with those tinker gnomes and what have you.
Yeah.
But it looks like I'll have to confirm this, but my chances of going to Origins now have just increased.
Yeah.
So that's a good side.
So between the three of us, we'll get as many conventions covered as we can.
Hopefully.
Yes.
All right. So so Icon's looking good. That's coming up April 15th through the 17th. It's at Stony Brook University, and there's a lot of good guests that are going to be there. I noticed Tim Bradstreet was the person that I spotted first, and you spotted a couple of good ones too, didn't you?
Yeah, Thomas Jane, the guy from the Punisher movie. Really good first Punisher movie. I enjoyed that movie.
Huh, cool.
Yeah, for anybody who's not familiar with Tim Bradstreet, go pick up a old copy of Twilight of oh my gosh, no. I almost said the entirely wrong thing. Twilight 2000.
You almost said Twilight the movie, Jason? God.
Yeah, I really nearly did. Go pick up a copy of Twilight 2000 for some of the real classic RPG artwork that you've ever seen coming from him. And actually, I just looked this up. He did cover design for an Iron Maiden album too.
Really?
Yeah. So
Nice.
I always thought Derek Riggs did everything.
No, apparently not.
That is pretty cool. Okay, he's just doubled his coolness in my book. All right.
I know.
And it looks like, I forgot to say this during the actual Play podcast plug, that Drama Man might be, from our community, might be adding his podcast to our lineup for things to talk for actual play.
What's he doing?
I think he's just going to record his weekly session on Saturday nights and add it up to our feed.
Nice.
So that'd be another thing for people to listen to once he gets that off the ground. And I think that's going to throw us into Sage Advice if no one has anything else.
Let's go there.
Sage Advice.
Welcome to this week's Sage Advice. And Vince, I believe we have got some emails that came in this week for Sage Advice.
Yes, we did. Pulling out of the mailbag, I pulled out, let me just get that piece of paper here. First email. Yeah, I know.
Nice Foley.
Yeah, I know.
We are a high-class operation.
That's right.
Yes, we are.
The first one is from Craig, or Skylos, S-Y-K-L-O-S. Am I saying that right? I'm not sure.
Sounds good to me.
Hi, guys. Great show. Wondering about the app. This is up your alley, Jason. I purchased it.
Oh, yes.
I purchased it, but I cannot find the psionics table you talked about in issue 31 or so. Actually, none of the things you guys have talked about are made available through the app. Where can I find them? How do I get these things? I would love a psionics chart. Some of the shows are missing from there, and it's skipped to the newest show. Is there any way you can help me?
Yes, okay. So the show part's the easy one. We're tagging those wrong. That's why they're not going up. I'll fix that right away. It'll be fixed by the time you hear this show. As far as the PDFs go, it was really weird how the app's set up because, this is built by our podcast host, Liberated Syndication, and they said, hey, you can put PDFs in as special features for people who buy the app. And it turns out those PDFs that you can put in there are only going to be readable on the little iPhone app itself, so they're really tiny. I think they're on there anyway, but in any case, what we really need to do is make those so you can just download them from the site. It's a good reminder to me, so we will, at the very least, make sure those are easy to find on the site. If there's any way to make them easier to read on the app, I'll do that too. But those PDFs, really, we can just make them available to everyone, I think.
Yeah, we'll just add a download section on the site.
So thank you for that reminder, because kind of let that one slip. Sorry about that.
Bad, Jason.
Yes.
Okay. So, okay. Next letter comes from Glenn T. He says, hey guys, do elves need to actually sleep once in a while or not? We settled this argument with our DM by allowing the elves to only need 48 hours of sleep a month. They did not need to actually sleep the entire 48 hours through, though. How do you guys handle it?
Wow, I've never thought about it.
Where did this whole idea that elves need less sleep come from?
I don't know.
That's what I want to know.
I think second edition started the whole elves don't need to sleep.
See, because in first edition, I never recall ever seeing anything like that. I don't know where this kind of thing originated from, where, well, elves don't need a whole lot of sleep. And I don't know. I just kind of assume that they sleep like everybody else.
Yeah, I think that is a second edition thing that came in, because I'm not I've never heard that before. I don't remember reading any fiction, that I'm talking outside of the D&D rules. I don't remember ever reading anything in popular culture about elves not sleeping or anything like that. So as far as I'm concerned, they sleep like anybody else.
Yeah.
I think this came up in my podcast, Book of Sorrows, and one of my players was like a thief. He was playing an elf. And he's like, do I need to sleep? And I thought about it. I'm like, wait a minute. That's right. Do they know? So I compromised and gave him, he had to meditate for at least 4 hours a night to get his rest. That's what I do for my elves.
Well, I guess it just depends on, how you want to run them. If you want to run the elves as a race where, because they're so long-lived, they don't need to sleep as much.
I think they need more sleep in that case.
I would think so, too.
All right, I'm looking at the monster. I mean, I don't remember anything about elves not sleeping, so I'm looking quickly here at the monster manual, because if it doesn't say it, then, look, it's a game. It's got rules. They're in here somewhere.
Right.
No. It says, you know what it might be, is that they have a magic resistance to the sleep spell. Maybe that's where this whole thing got started.
Yeah, but that's different. That's magical sleep. That's not natural.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is I think that fact that they're resistant to the sleep spell got confused in somebody's head.
I agree. That's what it sounds like to me too.
Yeah. Yes, elves sleep.
I guess it's a whole DM thing, depending on what you want to do in your campaign, or you can follow the book, which says elves sleep normally like everybody else.
And dwarves get drunk and pass out.
Do they?
Do they?
Yes, they do.
All the time?
At least in my campaigns, they do.
Oh, yeah, of course they do.
That way.
Yeah, of course they do.
Okay, well, there you go, Glenn. Last letter comes from DM Jarvis, and he says, and I often use this too, so I'll read it and answer it, and then you guys can do what you want.
Okay.
Do you guys use the basic D&D rules for ability checks, and how does that work? Is it under the number or over the number? 3d6 or 4d6? Thanks. Well, Menser, and I think Mulvey too, use 3d6 under the number for an ability check. Personally, I've added more dice to the pool depending on the situation if it gets more dangerous or more unbelievable. But I think it doesn't one use the D20 rule for that? Jason? No, they don't use anything.
Well, I think maybe later in one of the Unearthed Arcana, they might have introduced ability checks, or maybe it was one of the survival guides. But I thought we talked about this on a past show. I do the same thing that you do now. I hadn't really been doing anything before, so I'm now using D6s. If it's just a straight shot, if they're pretty likely to get it done, I do a 3d6, and then I add extra D6s for greater difficulty, just like you said.
Yeah,
sure. Okay.
So what about you, Nick?
Well, I've experimented with just using a straight D20 roll, and depending on what the situation is, how difficult the task is, I'll just either say low or high on a D20. Last thing I recall we talked about this once before, is I've kind of borrowed something from another system that they use for the basic role-playing system by Chaosium.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of based off of that. Basically, take your stat, multiply it by 5, and it's a percentage. And you can do a percentage roll by that, or times 3 or something like that, and do a percentage roll. And maybe modify here or there for maybe based on their level. Maybe they get an extra few percentages based off whatever level they are. So I was kind of kicking around that idea. I kind of like that one too. But to make it simple, most of the time, I like using a D20 roll.
Okay. I guess D20 is simple enough.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's the last email we have. If you want to send an email in for a question or some advice, rfistaff@gmail.com, or you can call us and leave a voicemail, 570-865-4210, the RFI hotline. Right, Nick?
The hotline.
Do that. Call us. Calling us is good.
Yes, we like voice, audio, email, whatever.
And physical letters. I'm the two letters that we've ever received, I keep here at my Dungeon Master desk.
He keeps it close to his heart.
Yes, I do.
He walks around with it tied around his neck all day long.
I just show them off to strangers. I go, I got a letter. Have you got a letter?
That'd be kind of
That's New York, I think.
Actually, you're right. That's New York. No one would think anything about it. So.
Yeah, they wouldn't think that's weird at all.
They just think you're a regular person on the street.
That's right.
Never mind. Let's head into table manners now.
Typical. Of all the evil creatures in the world, I'd like to find one with table manners.
What, are you kidding me? I spent years cultivating the worst table manners on the planet.
Table manners.
All right. This week on Table Manners, we're going to talk about, actually, I think is one of the more interesting subjects that can cause a little bit of, I guess, controversy.
Yeah.
Is monster PCs or using monsters as player characters. So,
Ooh.
Yeah, this is one of those kind of, it's almost a taboo kind of thing. And
Well, it specifically is taboo.
It's taboo.
It's actually
And
a
you know
taboo
what?
thing.
And when I outline it, after reading what's in the DMG, it makes sense why they are. Now, for everybody else who is following along with us, there's about one page in the DMG, page 21, where you can tell who wrote this. Gary Gygax, pretty much in his own words, reasoning, basically discouraging the use of monsters as player characters. Now, as far as there is any rules, there really aren't any rules for the DM to follow if he's going to allow such a thing to happen. And as far as, Gygax, what he was thinking of is people using monsters as player characters. He was focusing on like some of the more powerful undead creatures, maybe demons, devils,
vampires,
maybe even dragons. Yeah, vampires, liches. The independent undead, independently, intelligent undead.
Death Knight,
what have you. But he highly discouraged the using of monsters as player characters because, one, he says AD&D overall is a humanocentric kind of world.
Right.
And the reason is it's a common basis for everybody to draw upon. We could draw upon our common history, folklore, myths, and fiction that has been written and put down over the years to give us an idea of how to play in this world of fantasy. We at least have something to fall back on. And even though a person might play a dwarf or an elf or a gnome or a halfling or what have you, I mean, those races in themselves are not so far gone from at least, humans. I mean, they
Maybe we are
emotions.
not so different, you and I.
Yes, I mean, they feel the same things as other humans. They love, they raise families, they hate, they envy, they fear things, maybe in different extremes more than humans. But all in all, they experience the same things as human beings do. So we have, I guess, lack of a better term, a cushion to fall upon when we create these characters. Now, he did say that there are some few and far between sources, and he did say, I think, for like non-human viewpoints. And he said most of these are not very good to draw upon because it's very difficult to write in that sort of way, I guess.
Well, also keep in mind when he wrote this, it was the 1970s, and a lot of stuff has been written since.
We're talking late 70s here, yeah. So
so there's a lot of authors you can turn to now, and to kind of get a viewpoint on those kind of things. But he's right. I think that his admonition makes sense here, which is that if you're going to do this and you're trying to play in the world that he's created, it's really difficult to get into that other mindset. So be careful if you're going to go that way.
Yeah, and he did essentially say that, the DMG, if you're going to do this, if you really want to go down this road of having a monster as a PC, and I get the impression that if you're going to do this for one, you're only going to have one per group. That's one thing I got out of this. If you're going to do this of a adventuring party, you shouldn't have, no more than one, two tops.
Right.
Because I think we're talking about balance here.
Big time.
Well, okay, if we're talking about balance, if you've got a I don't know, a red dragon in your party, how is anybody else going to really be able to keep up with that?
Exactly. If you got a red dragon and a vampire in your party, and everybody else is playing a dwarf, elf, and two human fighters, a little bit out of balance,
I mean, I guess I'm saying maybe if you're going to start having dragons as player characters, maybe everybody should have one.
Right. If you're going to do that, it might as well be all or nothing. Yeah, I agree. And the second thing I got out of this, if you're going to do this, do it as like an experiment. Just kind of a brief flirtation with it. See how it goes. And then regulate that monster maybe as a non-player character. So,
yeah.
And that's pretty much, in a nutshell, out of that one page, what I got out of it. It's a humanocentric world because it's common knowledge of everything that we could draw upon from our world that we know about. And there's not a whole lot, at least at the time that this was written, there wasn't a whole lot of non-human stuff. And it's hard to incorporate, and you should just do it briefly. So,
well, one of the toughest things about it is the fact that monsters don't typically have attributes.
Right. And that's
so you've got to figure out what they're going to be.
Right. At the time, he didn't put those things in the player's handbook or the DMG. And he didn't want to.
No, it would make things so complicated if you started having to figure out, there's a pack of gnolls coming at you, and by the way, what's the strength and dexterity of each one as you do this? You'd get into bookkeeping, just hell.
Way too much bookkeeping. Yeah, you wanted to keep it moving, keep it flowing, and keep it as simple as possible, I guess. So
yeah.
I mean,
well, I'd like to see. I'm sure people have come up with their own rules for doing this kind of thing. There's probably somebody out there who's got an example of a campaign they did like this. I'd really be interested to see how somebody turned it into proper game mechanics.
I mean, the closest thing I've ever got to doing anything like this, even in first edition, was probably, someone who, got bitten by a vampire and they became a vampire. But I think even then they become a non-player character.
Whoa.
Or someone that becomes, and we talked about this before, someone that becomes, gets inflicted with a lycanthropy.
A werewolf.
Well, we had that. We had that happen in a game that I was playing, and somebody else was DMing just not too long ago, a few months ago, and one of the characters, exactly that happened. He became a vampire, and I don't know where the DM was going to take it, because it didn't sound like he was going to make him stop playing the character, and everybody was kind of into doing that, and then situations just arose, and we ended up killing him. So we never really found out, but I think that's kind of where I want the player characters to take it. That's kind of where I would prefer players to take it, is that they would just turn on the PC that became a monster.
Meh.
Well, yeah, for the most part.
I've only had bad experiences with this, so I never really used it.
Yeah.
I used it once, and one of my players played a Minotaur character, and it was just horrible, and I wanted to cry. That's all I got to say.
I hear that.
So, use it or leave it, Jason?
As an experiment, it would be fun to do. I'd like to run maybe a 4-week campaign with player characters as monsters, but no more than that.
Yeah, just a real simple use. I would think I'm going to leave it because I have such bad experiences with it. I mean, I played monster classes myself as a player, and it was fun, but as a DM, it's just too compensating on the fly to just adjust everything. So,
actually, just a second. What was the game? I don't know. I'm so useless for my memory. I don't know if we talked about it here on the show or if I read about it somewhere else. It's an indie game. It's meant for very short sessions where you begin.
Okay.
You get up to these incredibly high levels, and I think you might even be able to play a monster. But the trick is, whatever you do during this maybe like 6 or 7 session game, as you progress to this impossibly powerful character, then you start over again as low-level PCs, and now you face the monster that you created in your last campaign.
Oh,
so
that's cool.
however you performed as that powerful monster, that's what you're going to have to go up against now.
That's cool. I'd never heard of that one.
Wow.
So, Nick, what about
I wish
you?
I could.
Oh, sorry,
I
Jeff.
can't remember what it was. I don't know what the game was. We'll have to try to find out because it sounded interesting.
Nick, use it or leave it.
Well, I guess I could do it, but if I am going to use monsters as PCs, I think I'd limit it to humanoids. Like goblins or orcs or something like that.
So,
You know what? I just remembered what it was. It's not an actual game at all.
Oh no!
It was a few strips of Aaron Williams's comic Full Frontal Nerdity.
Ah, okay.
It was his idea. So it's not a real game.
Very, very difficult for the player to play out a monster like that because really the world's against him if you really think about it.
Hey, I hear Nick.
I hear Nick too. I guess Nick came back. Sorry, folks. Just having a little technical difficulties this week with Nick being not at home. So
yes, damn Castle Greyhawk.
Yeah. While we're waiting for Nick's connection to firm itself up, we have an update on that question. I got an update from an official source about elves sleeping. That is a second edition rule, and it's an optional rule, and it's part of the complete handbook of elves. And that comes from Corey, who is one of the hosts of Thaco's Hammer, the second edition podcast.
Okay.
Nice.
We're getting editions mixed up.
Yeah, he said it's a very optional rule. Not a lot of people use it, but people get it confused and just happen to use it now. He said.
So, by the way, I found it here. If you go Full Frontal Nerdity, it was November 16th last year. He did this for a few strips where he did what he was calling a legacy campaign. Ow, I just stabbed myself. Sorry.
What?
That really hurt. Don't keep knives around your desk. Okay.
You take, 4 points of damage.
That sounded like a 4 point of damage there. Wow.
Cleric.
Okay,
in the comic he did a thing where he said, he said they're going to do a legacy campaign where everybody leveled a lot faster, but they only get a few adventures before they have to retire their characters. And in it, as soon as they retired, then they had to go and face the former selves that they had played before. And that was it.
Cool.
It looks fun.
Wow.
You should check out the comic. It's a cool idea. Aaron is quite a gamer.
That's pretty cool.
All right, cool. Are you ready to go into game mechanics, guys?
Let's go there.
Yeah.
You think I'm mad. Perhaps I am.
What are you, a wizard, a genius?
Darn. A perfectly good brain wasted.
Game mechanics.
So, hey, this week on Game Mechanics, we're going to talk about something that we brought up on last week's show, which was chasing. Running, monsters and PCs chasing each other all over the place, having a foot race, all those kind of things. So I did some reading around. I did some looking up on this. There's been discussions about this in the Dragon's Foot forums. There was a pretty good in-depth discussion happened about 4 years ago on there. And that led me to a lot of different sources in just in the Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide.
Oh,
I looked
cool.
in Dragon Magazine trying to see if anybody had ever done an article on foot races or anything like that, and nothing I could find.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Really?
But
nothing in Dragon Magazine, huh?
No, but as it turns out, you kind of don't need to, because almost all the rules you need can be found in the original Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide with a little bit of help.
Okay.
So
do tell.
Yeah.
So let me go back and start with, just the basics here. So in the Player's Handbook, if you go back there to page 102, you will find some basic rules. This isn't really that helpful, but these are just basic rules for fleeing. So if a character is fleeing in a dungeon, and I don't remember off the top of my head because it wasn't that relevant to this, but it boils down to something along the lines of when you're fleeing, you're running at 10 times the normal speed, and you cannot do any mapping or anything like that.
Right. No.
But that's just for the purposes of, if you're running away from something and the DM has said that, yes, you're going to get away. That's how, just for purposes of distance. But if you get into the Dungeon Master's Guide, then we get a little bit of more interesting information. First, somebody on Dragon's Foot pointed out something that I had never really noticed before, If you go back to the DMG to page 15 where it talks about the character abilities and what they each mean, there's a sentence in here under dexterity where it says the dexterity rating includes the following physical characteristics: hand-eye coordination, agility, reflex speed, precision, balance, and actual speed of movement in running.
Oh, wow, okay.
Oh.
So it specifically says that when you're figuring out speed of movement in running, dexterity is your attribute. It never gets really brought up again, though, because in all the rest of the discussions in the DMG about fleeing and pursuing, dexterity doesn't come into it, which is weird.
I was kind of close with my rules using dexterity, but...
Yes, you were.
Close.
So then
that would be, so if you had a 15 dex, your movement rate would be 15?
No. First of all, it doesn't give any sort of mechanics for that at all. And second of all, at no point does it actually even go into how you would adjust it. So I came up with a couple things, but let me give you a little more some of the background of the DMG so that it makes sense why I did what I did, and then we'll try it out.
Cool.
Okay, so then if you go to page 68 and 69, there's sections for evasion and pursuit, underground and outdoors. And they get a little bit they're a little bit different. The underground, basically what it says is it speeds up the movement 3 times as fast. And it's pretty simple. If you've got they're all about parties. So if you've got one party chasing another party, you use the slowest member of the party that's trying to get away versus the fastest member of the party that's chasing them. And it just comes down to whether they catch up or not. So kind of basic, not much there. The outdoor gets a little bit more dice rolly.
All right.
But I wouldn't use this either, and I'll tell you why. So it says there's a base chance of evading pursuit when you're outdoors. You have an 80% chance to get away at the base level. And then you start making adjustments. So for example, you have a 10% greater chance to get away if you're faster than whoever's chasing you. You have a 20% penalty if they're faster than you. It never breaks it down into how much faster. I mean, because you've got monsters that go, if you've got a PC with a movement rate of 6, let's say that you're a gnome, I don't know, I think they move at 6, right? And you're being pursued by, some type of a bird that goes at 18, that's a big difference. But they don't account for that.
Oh. Okay.
And then it accounts for things like terrain. So it's a lot harder to get away if you're in open terrain. 50% penalty to your chance if you're on out in the desert or something. If you're in the forest, in the mountains, then it's actually 30% easier to get away. And this stuff keeps adding up. Stuff like, what kind of light is out there, how many characters are in each party, all that. But it doesn't really get into specifics about a chase, like an action chase scene. This is a little bit more for the parties trying to get away from the monsters, do we succeed? Or the monsters are trying to get away from us, do they succeed? And it's really just down to that. So what I did was I went through and I said, well, what would happen if I actually wanted to turn this into an action sequence? And here's the rules I came up with. I tried to keep them really simple. There's only 2 different kinds of rules that I've come up with. One is for PCs versus monsters, and the other one is for a PC versus a PC or an NPC. So, human versus human or something like that. For player characters versus monsters, it's simple as this. It's going to be based on dexterity and movement rates with a little bit of luck thrown in. So let's say, for example, that you've got I'm going to give you guys a couple of characters here. Let's just do this. Do you have any dice on you?
Yeah.
I do. Yep.
Okay. The only thing you need to roll up is your dexterity score. So if you can each roll 5d6 and come up with your dex scores.
Okay.
That's the only score you're going to – yeah, 5d6. And just take the top 3 just to make this simple.
Okay.
Okay, my dex is 14.
Mine's 11.
Okay, great. So let's see here. I'll give you characters here. We'll just stick with Vince and Nick. I mean, we don't need to come up with character names or anything.
Yeah, what you gonna do, brother?
All
I'm
right.
gonna run.
And you guys are going to... Do you want to chase the monster or be trying to get away from the monster?
I say we're chasing the monster.
Okay, so you're going to be chasing the monster. Let's grab something out of the monster manual here for you to chase. I just dropped my monster manual. Where'd it go? There we
How
go.
about just a plain goblin?
All right, do they move at 12?
I don't know, do they?
Let's see here. Here's a hippopotamus that moves at 12, so I'll make it a hippopotamus. I happen to open to H, so that's going to be the deal.
I guess that's dinner, Nick.
That's dinner. Okay, a hippopotamus moves at 12. Since monsters don't have ability scores, like we were just talking about earlier, we're not going to make any dexterity adjustments. But humans do. So... the dexterity adjustments, the only ones I'm going to use are the standard ones from the ability table. So you'll get from the reaction attacking adjustment. So the only place you can get bonuses is if you have a dexterity of 16 or higher.
Okay.
So in this case, neither one of you gets a bonus.
Right.
You're both just running. So now we got a situation where you're chasing the hippopotamus, right?
Right, we're chasing.
We
correct.
just said?
Yes.
Okay. So now you have a situation where you're chasing a hippo, and you move the same speed as the hippo. So how are we going to figure out whether you catch it or not?
Right.
All right. So what we do, we start out by figuring the distance that you guys are going to be away. So let's say he's 20 feet ahead of you.
Okay.
Right. So you start out, he's 20 feet ahead of you. And what we're going to do is each round, we're going to roll 3d6. And we're just going to compare the difference. It's like a roll-off every time.
Okay.
And if you had a dexterity adjustment, you would get to add that to your 3d6, but you don't. So what we're going to do is the hippo's going to start running. He's going to roll. He rolls a 9, and each one of you roll 3d6, please.
Okay.
An 11. Funny.
13.
Okay. All right, so Vince, you've just gained on the hippo by 2 feet, and Nick, you've just gained on the hippo by 4 feet.
Oh, I see.
So just write it down, keep it for yourselves so I don't have to keep separate ones. And, okay, so I'm doing this every 2 segments is the way I'm doing it in terms of time in case that matters. So now it's been 12 seconds. You've just gained on the hippo by 4 feet, and you've each run your normal distance, which would be, whatever, 36 feet or whatever, if it really matters. So now roll 3d6 again. I rolled a 14.
I have a 14 also.
Okay, so you're staying even with the hippo. And Nick?
Nick fell in the pool.
All right, Nick fell in the pool.
He tripped over a rock.
I'm going to roll for Nick. Nick just rolled an 18.
Oh, whoa.
And I'm using the iPhone dice roller because I don't know where my dice bag is right now, so that's why you're not hearing anything. But
okay.
So that means he's just gained on him another 4 feet. So he's now closed to within 12 feet. He's closed to within 1 square of the hippo. At this point, he could try to do anything he wants, but let's keep rolling. And
I got an 11.
Well, you actually got an 18. I rolled for you. You're much closer.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
That's okay. So,
My Castle Greyhawk Wi-Fi keeps on dropping.
all right, so I rolled a 7 this round, or this segment.
Really? I rolled a 9.
Okay, so you're 2 feet closer.
Yay.
And Nick, what'd you roll?
All right. I got 16.
16. Okay, so you've now closed 9 feet closer. You're now only 3 feet behind the hippo. At this point, you're close enough that if you wanted to kind of dive to see if you could get on him, I'd let you roll a dexterity check to see if you could make that final leap. And I would only make you roll 4d6 against your dexterity. So you can keep running, or you can kind of take that last hopeful dive. What do you want to do?
I'll try to dive for him. So 4d6.
Yeah.
Okay.
And roll under 14 on 4d6.
Okay.
Under 14.
5, 6, 9, 10, 11, 14. I made it on the nose.
Woo.
All right, so you barely managed to grab onto the hippo. You're now being dragged along by the hippo, and we could get into stuff after that. So there we go. It was that lasted for a total of 8 segments, so just less than a full round. In less than a minute, you guys ran a total of about 100 feet, and you leapt and you managed to drag yourself onto the hippo. So straightforward, right?
Yeah, that was a little more complex than I was doing, but I had something similar, so yeah, that works too.
So the one thing I would do differently. So that's for PCs versus a monster. Now, if the monster had a higher move rate, then he would be, instead of you guys, because he had a 12 move rate. So if he had, like, say, an 18, then he would be getting away with every single 2-segment roll, and you'd have to be rolling really high to catch up. So you're probably not going to catch him. The other type of chase scene approach that I would do would be human versus human, or PC versus NPC, or however you want to put it. Mm-hmm. And in this case, I think dexterity should actually make more of a difference. So if you two were running against each other, you've got an 11 versus a 14. So if this was a foot race, in every roll, Nick, you would get a 3 bonus to your rolls against whatever Vince gets.
That's the difference between the two.
Yeah, that's how.
Exactly.
That's how I was doing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And I think if you roll like that, you've got yourself a chase.
Well, you'd have to post this little chart up and everything you made so everybody could see it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Matt will help me figure out the internets, and I'll put it up on CompuServe or AOL or wherever we keep our email site.
I think it was mail.edu. I don't know, newsgroup
I
something.
think you send a letter to the internet and
Go
they put it up.
GopherNet.
GopherNet.
That's
oh
what
my
I'll
God.
I haven't seen that in a long time.
So there we have it. Chase rules with 3d6 and a little bit of dexterity adjustments for fun.
Yes, we'll put that up for you and enjoy it.
Creature, theater.
Okay, we're in the Creature Feature Theater this week with another monster we're going to be talking about this week. For a little while, we're going to go back to going just to standard talk about the creature. We do have 2 actual play podcasts up, so if you need to hear actual play, you can go right to that.
Hey, you just heard some actual running down the street.
There you go.
Yeah, here you go.
But this week we have Lava Children coming out of the Fiend Folio.
Yeah.
What you guys? I like this monster one thing because it has that giant grin on its face constantly. It's about the size of a normal human man, like a broadly built man. It kind of looks goofy and funny, but they're pretty deadly because one thing I find interesting really about this creature, it's immune to metal.
Yeah.
And anything metal like a sword goes right through it. And if it attacks you, it doesn't, like if you wear plate mail or chain mail, it doesn't count. Like as they go they go right through metal no matter what. And they can have fighters, magic users, clerics. They pretty much have all the classes. As if a normal person.
You want to be your friend.
Yeah. Are they intelligent? Let's see here. Yes, average
intelligence, and they're neutral, so maybe they could be your friend.
Yeah.
Damage attack is pretty good. 1 to 6, 1 to 6, 2 to 12.
Yeah. They have a bite attack and they have a claw attack. Their claw attack is 1d6 and their bite attack is 2d6.
Well, here's the thing about these guys. They are completely immune to fire and earth magic, too.
Yes. They are an offspring between the earth and fire spirits.
Yeah. So forget about using fireballs or stone to mud on these guys. No effect.
Yeah, these the magic users cast at spell levels level 6.
Wow, not bad.
So they started a hit dice of 4 and worked their way up. So they're little, meanies if you piss them off. So
I like the picture below where it shows, a lizard king with his trident? It's going right through the lava children. I'm like, whoa.
Nick, focus on the creature.
It is. There's lava children right there.
So would you use this in your game?
Oh yeah.
Jason? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the lava children are great. You can have so much fun just describing them to people, and the first time that they try to hit them with a sword and it just doesn't do a thing. It's a good example of the kind of creatures
love that Alfred E. Newman grin they get on their faces.
Yeah.
It's what me worry. What? Me immune to metal? But, it's a great way to teach your characters not to fight everything they see on sight.
Yeah, ask questions first, then attack, not the opposite. Yeah. So, I don't know, tell us what you do with the lava creature, lava children, and get back to us, rfistaff@gmail.com.
Right.
And let's head over to Dragon's Horde.
Right, this is one that'll definitely throw the players a loop.
The Dragon's Horde.
All right. Dragon's Horde. We're going to be covering the basically magic manuals and the ones out of the PHB here. Not Player's Handbook, sorry.
DMG.
Dungeon Master's Guide.
Yes.
DMG. And the various librams and tomes and, what they are and, do you allow them in your games? So let's kind of do a round table on this and see what everybody thinks about using these magical books. What about you, Vince?
Magical books. Depends on the power of the book, I would think. If it's something minor, I would use it. If it's something like a tome or like an artifact, I would probably consider using it, maybe not letting the players get access to it right away.
Right.
Because, you don't want... Like, the Book of Sorrows in my campaign is an artifact.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tome artifact. They don't know how to read it because it's obviously way more powerful than they are. So every time someone tries to read it, they have problems reading it, and they kind of go screwy-eyed, and they go insane.
Okay.
Kind of
something like a book of infinite spells, for example. This is the one where like almost every magic user this like drools over getting. So would that be something that you would allow in your campaign?
Well, I don't see why not. I mean, because Paladin's quest for the Holy Avenger.
Oh yeah.
So why not let the magic user quest for the ultimate book?
Sure. I agree. Well, there's all these different types. You got the ones like, if you look on page 138 and 139 of the DMG, you got the Book of Exalted Deeds, which is obviously focused towards clerics.
Yeah.
Then you got the aforementioned Book of Infinite Spells, and then you got the Book of Vile Darkness, which is focused towards your evil clerics.
Right.
So, I think like books like the Book of Exalted Deeds and Vile Darkness, I would definitely put somewhere, if I was going to use these magic items, like you said, not have them just randomly about. These would be, books that probably they would pursue in a higher level campaign. When you start getting around 7th.
Yeah, 7th to 10th level, and they'd be questing items, not a regular everyday pickup, I just found this in my cellar. Let me dust off this Book of Vile Darkness. Hey, Jason, check this out.
I mean, you're right. These books are meant to be powerful things that don't just get found in a random... You don't find them in a drawer when you're, second level and you're rifling through a house.
Yeah, going through the local magic shop and, what's this?
A particular stat by a...
Yeah, you're just, look what I happened to find at a bookseller's, in a dusty corner of the bookseller's shop. No.
And it's 50% off.
Yeah, with my Borders card.
No,
but,
that's going out of business.
Yes. But, even the Book of Infinite Spells, it's not actually infinite spells. It's a misnomer because it does run out. It's just a very powerful spell book.
Yeah, a book of chock full of spells.
Yeah.
Chock full of spells, exactly.
Like chock full of nuts.
Chock full of nougat.
So, I don't know, like some of these other ones, like, one of the ones I would be really kind of concerned about was, like, I'm thinking a whole of, like, the Manual of Golems.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Now they could start constructing things like clay or flesh golems.
Well, let's go take a look. It's a treatise on the creation of golems, and Yeah, sure. I mean, it's not like it's going to be easy to create a golem with this. You still have to go to all the time and expense of doing it, and
maybe going on
writing,
maybe a quest or two to get some of these things.
Yeah, but I don't think he's trying to say the book's not going to be sitting on the shelf at the local bookstore for you to take out at the library or something.
No, of course
Excuse
not.
me, do you have the manual of golems?
Yes, we do. Second shelf on the top left if you go in the back.
I'll need 3 because I'm going to make 3 golems.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's the other thing.
Do you want the new revised edition or do you want the older edition?
So, I mean, that's the thing is that it's only going to work for 1 golem anyways because the writing fades and the book is consumed in flames when you finish.
Right.
You know, and that's sort of a common theme throughout the books and librams and manuals is that for the more powerful ones, they self-destruct.
Yeah.
This book will self-destruct.
Yeah, in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
But I look at some of these other ones like the manual bodily health. Like it
I was just looking at that one. Yes.
Yeah, that one will increase
men's
your
health
constitution. I look at those ones that increase like your attributes by a point, something like that. They're pretty benign.
Well, I mean, look, raising one of your attributes by 1 point is a pretty big deal.
Sure, but you know, it's still not too bad.
No.
I mean, and if I would say if they come across one of these, I don't think they would come across another. You know, if they find a book of bodily health, that's the only one they're probably ever going to find.
It's in stacks. Yeah.
You know,
Well, you know, this is an interesting
type item.
So the manual of bodily health, it's actually kind of funny because it requires you to follow a dietary regimen and breathing exercises for 1 month. You actually have to read the book, and then the book is consumed. It's as soon as you complete the contents, the book disappears, right, or the writing disappears in the book.
Oh, I thought.
And now you've got. Right, you just get so hungry, and you're like, "Oh, it tastes good."
You eat the book.
So you read the contents, you learn the special secret regimen that you have to follow for 1 month, that if you do this, it will raise your constitution by an entire point. And as soon as you read the instructions, the writing disappears, and you now have to actually complete that regimen for a month, or else you don't get the constitution point. So I would read that as the DM is saying, if you're in a dungeon with this, and one that you can't get out of for quite some time, you pick up the book and make the mistake of reading it right then and there. As soon as you finish reading it, the writing disappears, and now if you can't get out of the dungeon in time to start your regimen, you're going to forget. So after, say, a week down underground with all this stuff going on, if you didn't write it down somewhere else, you're going to – in fact, I wouldn't even let you write it down because – the whole point is if you could write it down, you could just tell anybody. So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so that's actually kind of. I mean, these are pretty well balanced.
Yeah, all the books work that way. Even the one that increases the strength that's right below it says it works the same thing as the bodily health. So I would assume that once you read it, it goes poof and it's gone.
Yeah,
I don't know if it goes poof, but you know what I mean.
I think it makes it poof just like that.
Yoink.
It just disappears. I think like a bully comes up and kicks sand in your face and then disappears.
So you'd use it in your campaign then?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't see why not. Maybe as a quest item, probably.
Well, I wouldn't even make that. Well, maybe it's. Yes, sure, a quest item. I was just thinking that the thing I like about it is if you don't know what you've come upon, then. Reading it kind of messes you up. What I like most about all these librams and tomes and manuals and everything is that you don't necessarily know what you've got.
Yeah.
Kind of makes it fun. I like when characters try to figure out what it is that they've got. It's a big part of the fun for me.
Yeah, definitely. Not letting them know exactly what it is. Like I'm not going to say it now because I can't. It's going to ruin my campaign.
Well, tell us afterwards. Then.
Yeah, I'll tell you afterwards. Anyway, that's going to end the Dragon's Horde for this week, and I think we're going to head into this. We'll be right back after this.
Blackstone's Vault.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Blackstone's Vault. I'm your host, Blackstone, and in this segment I'll be covering the last in the series of the S series of modules, Module S4, The Lost Caverns of Zoicanth. This was authored by Gary Gygax. It was published in 1982 by TSR, and as I said, it's part of the S series of modules put out by TSR. Recommended levels are levels 6 to 10, and it was also a tournament module. It was used at a convention called WinterCon at WinterCon 5. Now, to start off with this particular module, this particular adventure, I'd like the listener to know that this particular adventure is very much steeped in the history and folklore of the World of Greyhawk fantasy campaign setting. In fact, the location, as stated in the World of Greyhawk box set, is somewhere between Perenland and Ket in hex E5-88. Now, the adventuring party has been hired out to find a lost magical treasure, an artifact, and it is rumored that this treasure is somewhere in the Yatil Mountains south of the realm of Perenland. Now, they are hired, like I said, to investigate rumors of this treasure, and many other adventuring parties have been hired to find this, but have perished. Now, it is said that this treasure is a remnant or part of a larger trove that was made by the Archmagus Igwilf. And she used to rule Perenland many, many moons before with an iron fist. Now, rumors have it that she was a very powerful mage. She actually had a demon prince in her servitude named Grazit, and is also rumored that Grazit eventually broke his bonds, killed Igwilf, but in between that time they may have sired a child, and that child does make its appearance in this module. Now, some of the NPCs that appear in this module, before I really get into that, it is split up into two major sections. There is a wilderness encounter section, and there is also the dungeon section. The wilderness encounter section is fairly large, and that's probably where the player characters will meet some of the more prominent NPCs and adventure locations. And then you have the dungeon section. On the outside, in the wilderness area, some of the major important NPCs that they will encounter, actually two from what I could tell, is the one encounter with a hermit. Now, this hermit, he has some valuable information about the caverns, namely the possible location, some other rumors, and if the player characters are careful enough, and if they are good enough to him, give him a little bit of treasure. He has a piece of a journal from a survivor of the Lost Caverns, and that they could read that for themselves. And if anything, it adds more to the mystery, this enigma that is the Lost Caverns of Zoicanth. In my opinion, it raises more questions than it does give answers. The other major encounter on the wilderness side is the Gnome Vale, or the Gnome Valley. There's a valley of gnomes that have taken up residence in this area. If the player characters play their cards right, this could be a good area for them to rest up, to heal themselves, maybe even get some training if possible, if they needed it, when they're trying to find the Lost Caverns. Also, when encountering the gnomes in this particular adventure, there is a link, a very loose link, to another module that is part of this, I guess what you might call a mini campaign if you used the two together. It's module WG4, the Forgotten Temple of Tharizdun. And I will review that one later on in another segment of Blackstone's Vault. So you have those two encounters on the wilderness side, and on the inside, really the major encounter of all the NPCs, of any of the creatures, is Drelnza, who is the daughter of Igwilf. And I will get more into detail about her a little bit later when we talk about the major encounters. Now, some of the major encounters, and as I've said, it is broken up into two sections. You have a wilderness section and you have the actual dungeon section. Now, the major wilderness encounters, as I said, there was the Hermit and the Gnome Vale, but there are some other I considered very, not very important, but can be kind of dicey for the player characters. There's an encounter with some wyverns. There's also an encounter with Catite and Perenlander patrols. So the player characters will have to be very careful in that encounter. There's also an encounter with some hill giants. There's also one with some griffins, and that one's tied into these griffins are being taken by bandits of humans and also some other humanoids. They're being taken and sold and being used as mounts for other people. Now, if the player characters play it well enough, they can maybe befriend these griffins and then be a really awesome mounts for them. And finally, as far as prominent wilderness encounters, there is an encounter with a blue dragon. So, some very, very interesting encounters in the wilderness section. When it comes to the dungeon section, for me, it's very difficult to pick out a few that really stand out amongst the others. In my opinion, most of the encounters in the dungeon are they're each a gem. I mean, I think this is one of the most wonderfully laid out dungeons that Gary Gygax ever made. I just think it's fantastic. And I think that what makes it interesting, at least for at the time when it was published in 1982, is the simple fact that many of the encounters in here are of new and unusual creatures that have never been published before by TSR Hobbies. Now, there are some mixed in with some regular monsters from the Monster Manual, and a few from the Fiend Folio, but when taken into account with the newer monsters at the time, it could really blow the players' minds of what they are dealing with. For example, you have some of the new monsters like the Peck, they're spelled P-E-C-H. These are in the Monster Manual too. The Dao, D-A-O, the Dao, which are a type of they're like genie or Ifrit. The Behir, which is a lizard-like creature that can shoot lightning out of its mouth. Those are just a few of the monsters that were quote-unquote new at this time. And many of these monsters do, if not all of them, do make their actual official debuts in the Monster Manual 2 that comes out in 1983. And there's some other interesting encounters. There's, at the very entrance, you have stone faces that have magic mouths. It's a bit of a, not of a trap, but of a kind of a riddle that the player characters have to figure out. There's a clay golem encounter. There's also a teleportation trap on the lower levels that sends the player characters to pocket dimensions. I don't want to get into details on those because I want to leave some surprises. There are some demons in this module that were new at the time. Again, will be seen in Monster Manual 2, like the Chasme. That's the kind of like the fly demon that's in here. And eventually, if the player characters survive, they meet Drelnza herself, who is a vampire fighter. She's very powerful. And if the player characters do defeat her, it is well worth it. They do get an artifact. And the artifact is a type of lantern called Daod's Wondrous Lanthorn. And it's detailed in the special insert that comes with this module. Now, some of the good stuff that's in this particular module. I love that this module is tied into the folklore of the world of Greyhawk. You have this vampire fighter, Drelzna, and her mother is an archmagus, Igwilv, who captured a demon, Grazit, and they sired a child, which was Drelzna. Don't ask me how she became a vampire, but I'm going along with it. It just makes a very interesting story. You also have this great insert that is with it, with the module. There's really two booklets. You have the booklet of the adventure itself, and you have a second booklet of new monsters, new magic items, and new spells. And that is worth its weight in gold, in my opinion. So a lot of real cool stuff. You get quite a bit. Wonderful maps, real good layout of NPCs if needed, or player characters if needed, if you're going to run it kind of like as a one-shot or as a tournament thing if you want to do that. And there's the tie-ins with the second, I guess, part of this mini campaign series, the Forgotten Temple of Tharizdun. If the player characters do meet the gnomes in the Gnome Valley, there is a kind of a plot hook of tying into that module, WG4, Forgotten Temple of Tharizdun, if you so choose to do that. There's no reason that you have or have not to. It's just another adventure that you can tie into this one. And also the simple fact that you get to recover a lost artifact, this Wondrous Lanthorn, that does some pretty cool and interesting stuff. So I think this is a great adventure. Also, I think it has a perfect balance between the wilderness and dungeon encounters. The one thing I guess that might be a not so good thing is that it is tied into the World of Greyhawk fantasy campaign setting. Some DMs who like to have their own campaign world might think that's not to their liking, but I like to use it. I think it's really interesting how it's all tied into the World of Greyhawk. So overall, like I said, it's the best balance between wilderness and dungeon in this module. It's just a great balance between the two. I don't know how other way I could describe it, but it has the best of both worlds, really. Great wilderness encounters and great dungeon hack and slash encounters too, and some thinking encounters in there as well. It has a little bit of everything for everyone. Also, it's just dripping with World of Greyhawk folklore. Now, who is or was Igwilv? Is she actually dead? Could she be someplace else? Could she have escaped Grazit? And who was Zoicanth? Who was he exactly? Nobody really knows for certain. But I'm sure some DMs out there who want to will go out there on the web and search for some information about this. You know, I think it'd be worth your time to do a little research on this. So that's Module S4, Lost Caverns of Zoicanth. I highly recommend it in anyone's library. It's one of my favorite modules that I own, and I hope to run it again very, very soon. Again, you can find this on eBay, and also if you go to your conventions, I'm sure you can find it. Make sure, if you do find this module, make sure, absolutely sure, that you have both booklets with it. The module itself with the adventure, and the booklet, the second booklet with the monsters and magical items. So make sure it's complete. So, big thumbs up for Lost Caverns of Zoicanth. My next adventure I'm going to cover is the one that's tied into this one. WG4, Lost Caverns of Forgotten Temple of Tharzadun. Excuse me, not Lost Caverns. Forgotten Temple of Tharzadun. So, this is the Blackstone's Vault. And may all your hits be crits.
Ooh, one of those electronic voting dealies.
Okay, so the 10-foot poll this week, and they'll be ending the show on this note. What do you think about the poll this week, Jason? If the house was on fire, what would you grab? What's the first thing you grab?
My vote was not one of the top vote getters, so I voted.
What did you vote for?
Yeah.
I voted. The only thing that got less votes than the one I voted for was nothing. The poll was the house is on fire and you grab, so nobody voted for nothing. Get out of the house. I voted for the least popular of the other options, which was if the house is on fire, you grab just the core 1E books. The orange spines can burn. And run.
I figured you'd like that answer.
Yes.
I voted all of my 1E books and run like hell. I was
How about you, Ben?
I voted. I grabbed my MP3 iPod with all the RFI podcasts on it because all my books are on there anyway. So
nice. They're in the cloud. They're in the cloud.
That's why.
So.
So it looks like the poll is all my 1E books and Run Like Hell with 54% of the votes. The MP3 iPod with RFI podcast on it, 25% of the votes. And just the core 1E books, the orange spines can burn with 21%. And 0 votes, 0% of nothing, get out of the house.
So hopefully this is not taken as a top tip for how to survive a fire, because we'd like to keep all of our listeners. So do get out of the house.
Yes, and make sure you take your D&D stuff with you, because that's important when you're sitting around waiting for your house to stop burning to play a game. This isn't so far from fiction, because the other day a massive leak developed in our ceiling, and I barely saved my entire Dragon magazine collection. Oh, jeez.
I heard this leak starting, and it wasn't – the sound was happening, but the leak hadn't come through the ceiling yet, and I'm running around trying to figure out where it's coming from, and then I saw the first couple of drops come down, and they just started to drip – right next to where all my magazines were, which luckily I've put in plastic. I just grabbed them and I started just tossing everything over onto the bed. And by the time I'd gotten the last one over to the bed, it just went like a faucet had been opened up.
Nice. Thank God you saved them.
Yeah. So
that would have been a lot of loss.
I didn't even want to think about explaining that one to my insurance company.
I lost my Dragon magazine.
I'm filing a claim, and they're like, well, what?
Get those appraised.
Yeah. These magazines are $3 each. I'm like, no.
Some of them are worth a lot more than
Shouldn't you get those appraised and stuff like that, like on Antique Roadshow or something?
Nice.
It's worth.
Well, with the I rent. We don't own. We rent. So we've got renter's insurance, and it's really good. It just covers whatever you've got. You say this is the total value of stuff in my house, and then they say if something happens, just kind of make a concrete case that it was really there. So
or just show them the soggy magazines.
That would sadly do it. So I think if the house was on fire, I'd probably run for my Dragon magazines first. They're harder to find than the books.
Definitely. All right, so that's going to wrap things up for this week. Any last-minute words, guys?
Yeah, sorry about the dropouts. I'll talk to Mordecai and fix the Wi-Fi here.
Mordecai's gainful Wi-Fi.
Yes, Mordecai's gainful Wi-Fi. I like that.
Boom. Anyway. So give us a call, 570-865-4210 for the hotline, or rfistaff@gmail.com, or Jason at RFI. Is it rfipodcast.com?
Yes.
RFI, and DM Nick at rfipodcast.com, and not me because I just use RFI staff. So, just give us a call. We got things lined up. We got the tip, we got the drop. Yeah. Anyway, so we're gonna say goodnight.
Bye.
Yes.
Say goodnight, Gracie.
Good night, Gracie. Keep it original, keep it old school, and good night, everybody.
Night, everyone.
for initiative.